Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahay Tejasvinavaditamastu Mavit Vishavahay. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the first of the online Bhagavad Gītā series and classes, which will follow a weekly format going forward every Wednesday at the same time. I see we have quite a few new people, and also a lot of people that have come across from the Vedanta Treatise book. So without sort of having formally met everyone, it's a little challenging to try and figure out where everyone is in terms of their understanding. So we'll try our best to, whilst catering to those completely unfamiliar with some of the terms and terminology that we use, hopefully keep it a little dynamic and inspiring for those who have been with us for quite some time. So as you all know, we are going to be studying the Bhagavad Gītā. And before we get into the text, we're just going to put you in the picture, as it were, because the Bhagavad Gītā is actually part of a larger epic. I think many of our Indian attendees would know this, and probably something that they sat with the family and watched on the TV as an endless part sort of series, and that is the Mahabharata. It's an epic. And it's no one is quite sure when this time was. Various historians have placed it at different periods in our history. Some as far back as 10, some say 15,000 years ago, and there is in fact evidence of a tremendous war that in fact did occur. So the event and the characters and the circumstances surrounding what we're going to be studying is in one way historical. Of course, we are interested in the philosophical aspect of the text. And this is actually the Bhagavad Gītā. The Bhagavad Gītā is the philosophy of the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is an epic, as I mentioned. And there are many, many stories within this book. It's voluminous, thousands and thousands and thousands of verses. And this story, which was written by Sage Vyasa, talks essentially about this feud that develops between two bands of cousins, you can call them. One band of cousins is known as the Kauravas, and the other band is known as the Pandavas. So we have a vicious band of cousins and a virtuous band of cousins. Now, in this Mahabharata, what actually happened was these vicious Kauravas, and I'm giving you a very sort of brief overview. And obviously, it goes into a lot more detail, and anyone who's interested in reading the epic of the Mahabharata is available online. I think you can get it on Kindle ebook. I will give you the exact author that we read, because like the Bhagavad Gītā, there are many different translations. Some even go into commentaries. And just a note on that, we will be discussing the commentary of the Bhagavad Gītā by a Parthasarathi. A Parthasarathi, known by his devotees, disciples, his students, his followers, many different people around the world call him a Swamiji. And he is my teacher and guru. And I was educated by him at the Vedanta Academy. Some of you have been there. Some of you know what it's about. The Bhagavad Gītā we are going to be studying is not Swamiji's Bhagavad Gītā, but the commentary that we're going to be examining is written by him. Now you'll find there's many, many, many different variations, let's call it, of the Bhagavad Gītā, not in terms of the verses. If you were to go to the verses and you were to read the Sanskrit verse, every version of the Bhagavad Gītā would remain the same. The Sanskrit verses do not change. However, as we know, Sanskrit is almost lost language. It is still read and very seldomly communicated in India. But there are scholars that have preserved the ancient texts and to an extent preserved the language. In fact, we're going to, in the Bhagavad Gītā, there's obviously reference to the Sanskrit texts. And the first stage beyond the Sanskrit is obviously trying to get it into a format that we can understand, and that is the English-speaking language. So it goes through a twofold process. You'll notice, those of you who have acquired the book, the Bhagavad Gītā commentary by Parthasarathi, will see that the verse gives you the Sanskrit in Devanagari, and then it'll give you a transliteration where it breaks down each Sanskrit word into an English equivalent, as it were. That again is then translated. Now, if you have to pick up different volumes of Bhagavad Gītā, you will notice that by and large, the translations, not all volumes will include a transliteration, but the translations, you will notice there starts becoming a few variances. Not all translations of the Sanskrit verse will be the same. Now, the reason for that, of course, is that translation is always open to the translator. In fact, many people have approached Swamiji from around the world, so impressed by the knowledge that he has communicated in such contemporary thought, and have offered to translate his books into their language. He said, by all means, please, one prerequisite. That prerequisite is you have to do the 3-year course. Only by doing the 3-year course can you understand the mental acuity with which he approaches the text. And therefore, you would have some idea or inclination of how to put that into language. Now, I'm slightly drifting off the point here, but coming back, we'll see that in various volumes, you're going to have different translations. And that is because various commentators are pulling different meanings from the original Sanskrit text. many famous editions of the Bhagavad Gita that are globally well known, the feel of the entire commentary is radically different. Now, of course, in terms of commentary, you could almost be reading different books. It's that diametrically opposed. And again, the reason for that is because of the angle of approach. Many, many commentators approach the book, the Bhagavad Gita, from a very devotional approach. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. In the world, we have a heterogeneous variety of human beings, all composed of essentially three ingredients, which are the same, and that is a body, mind, and an intellect. But the proportion and emphasis on each of these equipments vary. In fact, it is never the same. And that's why every individual is unique and different. Now, when we talk of a more devotional approach to the Bhagavad Gita, to this philosophy, we are having commentators that are catering more to people that are predominantly mind. That is the predominance of their personality, mainly mind-led. So you'll find that their sadhana or their spiritual practice will require a more devotional approach. And that is why these authors cater to that group of people. Now, in terms of Swamiji's approach, he is catering to the intellectuals. And just a note, when I say intellectuals, I'm not meaning people that have a lot of intelligence, people who have a lot of knowledge. Wow, that guy is really intelligent. Do you see how much he knows? Hear him speak. It's amazing. Intelligence. When I say intellectuals, these are the people who are questioners by nature. These are the ones who are applying and using their intellect to try and understand this deeper import of the philosophy. So just to cite an example, a devotional approach to the Bhagavad Gita puts all the emphasis on Krishna. Krishna, the personality. So whenever there's a mention of me, come to me. Personal pronoun. They interpret that as Krishna, the personality. Whereas from a more intellectual approach, whenever Krishna says me, or in fact, whenever any of these spiritual masters use that personal pronoun, me or I, what they are implying is, or what they are referring to is the self, the Atman that enlivens them, because they have realized their true nature. Here we have one such person, Krishna. And Krishna is in this Bhagavad Gita, in this story, let's call it for now. He's the main character. He's the lead role. Krishna is the lead role. And Krishna is, again, a historical figure. He had a birth and he had a death. He was a man, just like you and me, or a human being, should I say, politically correct. He was a human being, but quite a remarkable human being in the sense that he had realized his own self. He had gained the state of self-realization, godly realization. Now, the other character, and we'll get to this in this epic, is a fellow called Arjuna. I'm going to give away too much now. Let's just let's get back to the backdrop of this all. So what's happened here? we got these two bands of brothers, and this evil band of brothers has actually, by devious means, in fact, through a gambling game, they forced the virtuous brother, the head of the family of the virtuous Pandavas, to gamble away the kingdom. So he loses the kingdom in a bet. You may say, serves him right. We're not examining that at this point. All we're saying is the kingdom was lost. So the evil brothers, the Kauravas, the band of evil cousins, 100 in number, they said to the Pandavas, you guys are out. We're going to rule the kingdom for 13 years. That was the bet. That was the stipulation, the rules. We're going to rule this kingdom for 13 years. Now, in those 13 years, 12 of them, your lot. And remember, the Pandavas are only 5 brothers, 5 virtuous brothers, and wife, Draupadi. Now, you are banished to the forest. You have to live in the forest for 12 years. Then, in the 13th year, you're allowed out of the forest. But you have to integrate back into society without anybody knowing who you are. Incognito, you must remain for a year. If once all these conditions have been met, the kingdom is yours again. They agreed. Fair enough. All's fair. Love and war. We lost the kingdom. We'll fulfill our end of the deal. And off they went. And you can imagine, rulers of a kingdom, princes, princesses, sent to the forest. They had to clothe themselves in, it's described as bark and leaves, living this forest dwellers, with the forest dwellers. Anyway, many, many years, 12 years to be precise, passed, and they came out of that, and then they entered the kingdom, and they all took various roles within the kingdom, all incognito, fulfilled their obligation. After 13 years, they went to the Kauravas and said, listen, we fulfilled our end of the bargain. It's time for you to fulfill yours and return the kingdom to us. Kaurava said, get lost. We're not interested. Of course, they had been enjoying a kingdom and all that goes with that, the wealth, the opulence, the games, the sport, the food, everything that comes with being a royalty. Enjoying all the good side of it. Meanwhile, what had happened? The kingdom had fallen into turmoil. Unrighteousness prevailed. So, we have a situation developing here, where on one side we have a kingdom that's due to the Pandavas, and the other side is Kauravas who are not prepared to give it back to them. So they went to Krishna and sought his help and said, please, can't you talk to him? Can't you, talk some sense into these people? Krishna tried, to no avail. So war was inevitable. Civil war between two bands of cousins. The civil war was inevitable. Now, they had determined, this is it. We're going to start this war. And both these brothers, the head of the Kauravas and the head of the Pandavas, they went to Krishna while he was sleeping. And they waited. They both waited because they wanted help from Krishna. Krishna awoke and he saw the virtuous brother. And because he saw him first, he said, what is it? Why have you come here? And they two stood there and presented themselves. Both of them said, we want your help, Krishna. We come to seek your help. He said, fair enough. He said to the virtuous brother, what is your request? Well, in fact, he said to the vicious brother, what is your request? You can't have me and my army. So I'm splitting myself. This is the deal. You can either have me, who comes unarmed, or you can have my battalions, all my weapons, all my armies. You can imagine the evil brother was, this is amazing. And what did he do? Took the army. Yudhishthira, he was delighted. This is the head of the Pandavas. He was delighted. Krishna, you are with us, unarmed. So the scene was set. And here we have Arjuna, who's one of the brothers. Arjuna was a mighty warrior. In fact, he was in charge of leading the army into warfare. And because Krishna was unarmed, Krishna agreed to be Arjuna's charioteer. That's all Krishna could do. He could just drive the Arjuna's chariot. In those days, in the wartime, you had the driver in the front, the chariot driver in the front, who would control the horses. And then in the back, you have the Arjuna, who's firing the bows, firing the arrows. So this is the backdrop. And now we come to the battlefield, the 0 hour of battle. And what's happened here? The two armies are assembled. Vicious Kauravas, virtuous Pandavas. In fact, the Kauravas far outnumbered the Pandavas. I'm getting a little bit into the first chapter here. We're going to go through the first chapter, which is not disappointing. Okay, there's very little philosophy in it, but there's a lot of psychology. Very, very interesting. We can learn a lot from the chapter, and that's why we're taking it. In the public lectures, often the first chapter is skipped. Now, Arjuna says to Krishna, take me through the battle lines. Let's see what's going on here. He wants to assess the armies, the two armies stationed on either side. Krishna obeys, and off they go. And they drive. And many of you have probably seen those pictures. Arjuna on the back of the chariot, Krishna driving the chariot between two armies. Arjuna says, stop. Stop the chariot. They get off to examine what's going on. And Arjuna, in front of him on the opposite side, sees his brethren, his family. They're essentially family, two bands of brothers, two cousins, two parts of one family, ready to do battle with each other. What happens? Any of you who know the story know that at that point, Arjuna collapses on the battlefield. He says, Krishna, my limbs fail and my mouth is parched, my body trembles and my hair stands on end. He becomes incapacitated to fight. Cannot fight. 13 long years they've waited for this war. And now at the 0 hour of battle, Krishna and Arjuna standing there, Arjuna falls down into a heap. He can't act. I can see all your faces sitting there. Wow, best class, such a story. Very good storyteller. Wow, what is the significance of this? Arjuna breaks down. What is the significance of this? See, everything has a significance. You're all sitting there going, oh, Such a lovely story. If every class is like that, definitely I'll attend next week. Beautiful story. Yeah, we only just started. No, everything has a meaning. Even the bands of brothers. What do they represent? What does everything represent? This is what we need to examine. This is what we need to draw out. So, what does Arjuna collapsing represent? What does it mean to all of us? Anybody? I'm not asking trick questions, eh? I think out of all the questions I've asked all of you, I think one of them was a trick question. Yeah, it's not bad. Not a bad strike rate. One trick question out of how many questions did I ask? Hundreds and hundreds. One trick question. But I know you all sit there. This time, I think it's this time he's trying to trick us. It must be this. Yes, it can't be so straightforward. I think he's up to something now.
Okay, Craig, I'll try.
Yes, please, Teresa.
I'll try. I'm wondering if this collapsing means that his intellect's not available to him.
Yes, we could say that his intellect is not available to him. Yes, he has lost his way. The intellect is not there to guide him. We can say that. But what does Arjuna represent? What's he faced with? He's faced with a war, right? He's faced with a challenge. Arjuna, not some funny fellow that's driven around by some other blue fellow with a bow and arrow. Arjuna is every one of us. And when we meet the challenges of life, what happens? We buckle. We tend to buckle. I'm not saying every challenge you buckle and you end up in a heap, capitulating, sweating, parched. I'm not saying that. But when the challenge presents itself, and remember, life, what is life? One series of challenges, one after the next. Some are easy, brush them off. Ha ha ha. That was not too difficult at all. Some are difficult. And then your friend comes and says, you know, I'm having a really tough time. Sit down, my friend. Come and tell me your problems. I'll give solutions for you, left and right. You are a master at dealing with everyone else's problems. But when the problems come to you, this is what happens. The same thing that happened to Arjuna. He collapsed on the battlefield. Now, again, what is this? That was my first question. Anyone remember the second question? Molly, how do we respond or react? Molly, good question. Excellent question, in fact. Not very philosophical, I think, from what I can understand. But you can react by unmuting yourself, putting up your hand, or typing in the chat. I always like to hear everyone's voice. So that's my first option. Putting up your hand, this helps, obviously, when there are a lot of people who want to give their input, so then I can just monitor and unmute you or ask you to unmute. So that's how you would respond, if that's what you meant by your question. See, without any emotion, you know, this text messaging, very difficult. You often get, this is why couples fight. But you said this in your text. But you use this emoticon. But that's not what I meant. But this is what you said. The same thing here in the classroom, you know. Got to try and decipher your messages, your chats. That's why I said I prefer if you just speak to me. Anyway, anybody remember the second question? Okay, so the second question I asked was, what do the Kauravas and the Pandavas represent? Yeah, vicious band, virtuous band. What does it signify? Everything has a meaning. This is what you have to draw out. This is the exercise. Of course, we're going to be going through it and we're going to be helping each other along as we go. But this is what you have to be able to draw out of the text. You see, it is one thing for any teacher to sit there and give information, give knowledge. But if there is going to be any development within your own personality, you will have to attempt to draw the philosophy out, draw the meaning out of what's being said. And this often comes through the process of questioning. This is why we often encourage questioning, because it assists the student in gaining clarity on an idea or a concept. Now, I'm not saying everything that pops into your head, ask. When there is a genuine doubt, when there is something that is not clear, it is your obligation as a student in this classroom to clarify. See, it's very difficult for me to be able to assess who's understanding and who's not. Now, the only way I can try and figure out whether everyone is following is through a series of questioning. Either I'll throw questions at you or you throw questions at me. Either way, I'm happy. So, what do the Kauravas and Pandavas represent? Good and evil, right and wrong. Incomplete answer. Yes, we've said that. Vicious and virtuous. You're using synonyms here.
How about mind and intellect?
Ah, thank goodness. There you are, Craig. All is not lost. Mind and intellect. The mind represents or is associated with the negative tendencies. Don't understand the mind to be negative. It has many virtuous aspects. But in the context, the mind is associated with negative tendencies, tendencies that draw you down. In the sense, the mind is the seat of your desires. Purely acting on your desires will end you up in a devolved state. This is where humanity is driven to devolution. What are we trying to do? Just the opposite, evolution. How do we achieve that? Through the application of the intellect to ultimately fine-tune those desires, improve the quality, reduce the quantity, and change the direction to ensure that we attain a higher state of human evolution. This is called self-development. So, back to the story. Arjuna has collapsed. Right. That's how far we got. And you're going to see. That's why most of the first chapter is a write-off. Because it's only Arjuna speaking. A little bit here, Dhritarashtra, who's the blind king, speaks. Sanjaya speaks. He's been given the powers to tell the blind king what's going on the battle. They're far away at Hastanyapura. But invariably, most of the first chapter and the first 10 verses of the second chapter is all Arjuna blabbering. Blabbering and blabbering and blabbering. Eventually, what happens? Arjuna surrenders to Krishna and asks for help. This is very, very significant. And it's one of the first lessons that we learn in philosophy, and that is knowledge is taken, it is not given. You know, Craig, I have to tell you the story. You know, I've been coming to class for months now, years now. Anyway, I went to this bra, and I was just telling these people, you know, you can't function. This is minded and da, 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 da. We've forgotten lesson number one. Knowledge is taken. It is not given. lesson number 1. You seek knowledge. You don't give knowledge. If somebody comes to you to ask for help, you give it. Help in the form of knowledge. This is the context. What does Krishna do? He gives Arjuna the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gītā, the philosophy, the sublime truths of life. Now, we don't know how much Arjuna benefits from all of this, but most certainly the intellectuals, they are the ones that benefit from this exquisite presentation of Vedantic truth. Now you're going to find as we move through the text, excluding the 2nd chapter, see what happens. Arjuna ultimately surrenders. He says, I'm done, Krishna. He's ready to leave the battlefield, a warrior. You've got to understand that Arjuna is a mighty warrior. He's fought many, many battles and won many battles. He's proficient in his archery, one of the best. Here, a mighty warrior collapses. Thank goodness. And you see, it's brilliant. For 1 chapter, 10 verses, Krishna is silent. He doesn't say anything. And eventually Arjuna runs out of steam and he hands over and says, Krishna, I need help. The 2nd chapter, one of the most fascinating pieces of philosophy, dealing with the highest philosophical content. Krishna blasts Arjuna. The reason I say excluding the 2nd chapter, it's all methodical presentation, because you wonder, how can he start there? He's starting with the highest truths. He talks about sthita prajna, a self-realized person. 1st chapter. There's a reason for this. We'll get to it. But thereafter, from chapter 3 all the way through to chapter 18, 701 verses in total, the Bhagavad Gītā. Some have 700, one is excluded. Anyway, methodically, from chapter 3, Karma Yoga, the yoga of action, Krishna presents the knowledge methodically, scientifically, for us to understand. He takes you through a course of study. This is important. For you, all of you that have come through the ranks here, as it were. Where did we start? Where were we? Where are we now? For all of the human intellect. What is the body? What is the mind? What is the intellect? What drives the action? What causes the body to act? Is it the mind? Is it the intellect? Give a diabetic a sweet. Sound familiar? Age of perception, age of observation, age of scientific inquiry, age of contemplation, 6 reasons why you should or shouldn't get married, herd instinct. Building blocks, the fundamentals of philosophy. Then we move through Holocaust of Attachment onto Vedanta treaties. And even there you see this beautiful sequence of thought building you up, 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 up. The Bhagavad Gītā is no different. So invariably in the Bhagavad Gītā is Krishna explaining to Arjuna. Now, sometimes Arjuna interrupts and asks a question, and Krishna answers that question. Some other chapters, Krishna just picks up where he left off and continues talking. Now, what we have to appreciate in the context is Arjuna is a warrior. He is a man of action, just as we are. And that's why I said earlier, Arjuna represents every one of us. Because what are we all doing? We are all acting in the world. We are all functioning in the world. We have various roles to perform. We are either parents in a family. We're either employees or employers in businesses. We belong to clubs. We belong to social outings. So we're all engaged in the world. We're all performing activities and actions in the world. We're all men and women of action. The question that we have to examine for ourselves is, how are we acting? We're either acting in a vicious way, or we're acting in a virtuous way. We're either functioning either off the mind, or we're functioning off the intellect. This is what it boils down to. You may say, oh my goodness, what have I got myself into? I thought we were all finished with this mind intellect stuff. Now you're bringing it back in the context of the Gita, Craig. Entire philosophy. It doesn't matter. You open a Bible, you open a Quran, you open a Bhagavad Gītā, you open Upanishads, chipping away at the same thing, this eternal struggle that exists. Where? Not on the battlefield. In the battlefield here. Your constant struggle daily is choice of action. What am I to choose? On what basis are you making choices? Are you making the right choices? So that's the context. And that is why this philosophy is so applicable to every one of us. Now, the Bhagavad Gītā, we can say, is nothing but a manual of life. A manual for living. You get any device. Now, it doesn't always come with the device. You got to go on the internet and you can download the manual. They only send you the box with the charger. Anything else you pay for. No, but it didn't come with a plug. No, of course, yeah, extra. Oh, but it didn't come with, yeah, that's also extra. Lucky they haven't started charging extra for the manuals to download, but it'll come only a matter of time. Anyway, just as with any appliance, with any gadget that you get, there's a manual. Same thing with life. There's a manual. A manual on how to get through, what to do, how to function. How many of us have read the manual of life? Or even know what the manual of life is? This is where the problem starts. Nobody's even aware of the fact that there is a manual. There's a manual for life. That's why he says there, that's exactly the quote. Living is an art, it's a skill, it's a technique. You need to learn and practice it as you would to play a musical instrument or fly an aircraft. Living. Just to be able to live. Just to be able to play a game. What do you need? First thing you need in a game. What's the first thing you need to know in order to play a game? Anybody?
Rules.
There we go. Excellent. The rules. The rules of the game. Without the rules, it isn't that game. So yes, great. Donna. The rules. We need to know the rules of the game. Once we understand the rules, then we can begin to engage. We can begin to practice in accordance with the rules. Life is no different. There's a set of laws laid down by these eminent thinkers, these magnificent personalities. Call them divine, giant intellects. Krishna was one of them. So he has much to teach us about living. Of course, as always, disclaimer, this is best given to the young people. Don't worry, even if you're an oldie, you're not disqualified. I'm not disqualifying you for one reason, and that is the hope that you will pass it on to your children. And when I say pass it on, don't forget rule number 1. You don't sit there. You know what I learned tonight? This is what you girls and boys should be doing. Why are you wasting your time? If you want to really drive your kids away, do start doing that. Getting on their backs, irritating them with do's and don'ts. The worst thing you can do. No. What I mean by it is assimilate this knowledge. Make it a part of your own life so you live these values. That's how children learn. Abraham Lincoln, if there is one way to teach your child, is to go that way yourself. That's why I'm not disqualifying any of the oldies. Oh, what about me? I don't have children. You must know someone's children, or you must be someone's guardian, somewhere along the line. Anyway, where's the world today? I don't have to point that out to any of you. Anybody who has eyes to see can appreciate where we are. It's not a pretty place. Endless documentaries on Netflix. I don't know if it's just me or what. The endless documentaries are there. Some algorithm or something. And you want to show me what a state the planet's in. Every documentary it pops up. This is the state of the planet. This is what we're doing. This is where we're destroying. This is. No wonder I have this perception of things, you know. No, I'm only joking. You yourself can appreciate it's not all bells and whistles. Let's be frank. Why? Why is that? Anybody? Why are we in this situation that we find ourselves in?
Many of us are mind-led and not using the intellect.
Correct. The fall of the human intellect. What a fall was there, my countrymen. And he and I, they'd all fall down. Jess wants to know, what does Krishna represent in the story? Krishna is a self-realized person, a man of perfection. This is what Krishna is. And he represents not only the truth, but he illustrates the means by which one can achieve that. This is essentially what Krishna is. Krishna is not a god. See, a god has no birth and has no death. God is eternal. Ever was there, ever will be there. It's a god. Krishna is a human being, like Jesus Christ was a human being. He was born and he died. But in that sojourn, he achieved what very few human beings are able to achieve. And that is recognizing his own nature, realizing the truth with a capital T. He had gained that state of self-realization, crossed the boundaries of the terrestrial realm of existence and merged with the totality, the fourth state of consciousness, Turiya. Okay, so I just want to bring up a few concepts that the book highlights, and please, these are not this is not a complete list. If I have a complete list, then we'll be here all night, because each chapter in itself has got is broken down into topics. And again, this is just another note with reference to the particular commentary that we are studying. And you'll notice, those who have the book, that each chapter is divided up into topics. So even chapter 1 is divided up into various topics. Now, you'll find that these topics are not in the original work. They're not in the original text. The topics are there and were put there by Swamiji for us to assist us, should I say, in establishing the thought flow. Without the topics there, it becomes very difficult, or a little more challenging, should I say, to understand the flow of thought. With the topics, it becomes a lot easier. So you'll see at the beginning of every chapter, he breaks the verses down into a series of topics. Like I said, this list here, these concepts, are not an exhaustive list. They just highlight some of the ideas, what we're going to be dealing with through the course of the study. So as I mentioned, he starts off with action. And why? Because we're all acting. Action is a must. Inaction is death. You cannot afford not to act. So act. You see, what is it? Chapter 3. He talks about karma yoga. Now, karma yoga is nothing but the yoga of action. Action. Act. The value of action. Now, in the Upanishads, just finding it here. Chapter 3, the yoga of action. 43 verses. He describes what is action, what is right action, the blueprint of right action, how to act. No, we all believe, what action you're talking about? Simply push snooze again, get up, brush your teeth, go to work. We're not talking about that action. Right action. What is right action? 43 verses. He takes us through right action. You go to the Upanishads. What does it say there? If you cannot meditate, act. That's it. Finished. If you are unable to meditate, act. That's it. So you can appreciate the Upanishads is a much more cryptic, terse text. In fact, the Bhagavad Gītā is often referred to as bizarre notes on the Upanishads. See, as thinking deteriorated through the generations. First, this philosophy was prevented. Vedanta means, it comes from two words, Veda and Anta. Veda is knowledge, Anta is end. Vedanta, end of knowledge. And there's a pun on that. But one of the meanings is because it's at the end of the Vedas, the Upanishads. The first philosophical content of the Vedas is the Upanishads. Now, the Upanishads talks in this terse script language. It just says act. Because in those days, there was only one type of action. Unselfish, selfless service. That was the only way to act. Nobody understood any other action. Now, the only action we know is completely opposite. What am I getting out of this? You want me to work? How much are you going to pay me? You want me to do this? What are you going to do for me? Yeah, I don't mind doing that, but you owe me a favor. You owe me a favor, right? Huh? Oh, no, then I'll do it. Then it's fine. So this is why we need this education, because we've lost it. Now, the Upanishads were speaking to a different audience. Bhagavad Gītā is like bizarre notes on the Upanishads. A lot of elaboration, explanation. Anyway, I'm drifting off the topic here. These are some of the fundamental concepts. Value of action. What it means to act in this world. What is correct action? He gives the blueprint. Then he talks about renunciation and action. What is renunciation? Renunciation, as we know, or may know, some of us may know, nothing but objectivity. Having that panoramic view in life where you are still participating, you're going through the same physical, material experiences, the same emotional experiences, the same intellectual experiences, yet you are apart from it. Another fundamental concept is this knowledge of the higher, knowledge of our true nature. This is one of the core themes of the Bhagavad Gītā. Knowledge of the self. Then he talks about spiritual disciplines. The 3 spiritual disciplines that every one of us will need to engage in if we are to evolve. If we want to be spiritual beings. Spirituality is nothing but the elimination of desires. Getting rid of the desires. This is being spiritual. So he outlines these spiritual disciplines. Another core concept, fundamental theme is the development of self-sufficiency. This is the ultimate goal of any self-development practice or spiritual disciplines, is to attain a state of self-sufficiency. You derive a sense of subjective well-being independent of the world. Right now, every happiness that you are experiencing is dependent on factors over which you have no control. You're happy because you have a nice family. You're happy because you have a good job. You're happy because you have a nice house. Take any one of those things away. What happens? Fluctuations. You're not that happy anymore. So your happiness, you know, is based on external factors. Self-sufficiency is a state of happiness that is independent of external factors. Then he talks about the state of self-realization, the culmination of knowledge, the end of knowledge. This is Vedanta. This is the ultimate goal of Vedanta, is to attain that state of self-realization. Only a human being is capable of this, because only a human being possesses a subtle intellect that can usher any one of us towards that state of spiritual enlightenment. So, between Dharma and Mama, now you'll find that the Bhagavad Gītā starts with the word Dharma and it ends with the word Mama. You see, this sage Vyasa, the guys that write these scriptures are frightfully attuned to the highest thought. Frightfully. Dharma and Mama. What is Dharma? You may have heard the term Swadharma. Follow your Swadharma. Swa means one's own. Dharma means nature. Paradharma. Para means alien. Dharma means nature. So Dharma is nature. And this is the start of the Gita. He starts with Dharma. He ends with Mama. My. The entire philosophy packed between these two words. My nature. What is he referring to? Your essential being. At this particular moment, you do not know who you are. You believe yourself to be this limited, constricted personality. this body, mind, and intellect. Convince yourself. We've all convinced ourselves. You're telling me I'm not Craig, teacher of philosophy, head of Vedanta Institute, Cape Town? That's me. You're not that. We are so ingrained in that thought and that belief, nothing can change it. Intellectually, we can appreciate, yeah, I get what they're saying. Yeah, I'm the self, But through every action, thought, word, and deed, there's this constant presence, underlying presence. We're not even aware of it most of the time. This ego that percolates, permeates, destroys it all. So, mama dharma, my nature, my essential nature. Krishna had achieved that. He had recognized his own nature, his true nature, that Atman, that self within. In fact, all these realized masters, all saying the same thing. You are not what you are imagining yourself to be. You are that truth. You are that reality. Get back to that. The book just serves as a marker, a pointer to get there. You want to know how to get somewhere. What do? Nowadays it's easy. Google Maps. Okay. Some people don't like Google. Maps. Or iPhone. Maps. Just maps. Oh, put Google there. Anyway, you want to find Waze. I only use Waze. Waze is better. I like the little cars, the little car drawings. Better. More functional for me. Anyway, whatever you choose, wherever you want to go, what do? You plug in your end point, and what does it do? Amazing, actually. Technology is brilliant. Some of us growing up, this is really remarkable. Can tell me exactly, and it'll show me around the traffic. Wow. Incredible. It just maps it out. This is exactly what the Bhagavad Gītā is. It just maps out your route to get to where you want to go. Where does everyone want to go? That's the question. Anybody? Where are we all want to go? Or where do we all want to get to?
Inner peace and happiness.
Inner peace and happiness. One adjective missing. One
serenity and lack of mental agitation.
Yeah, no, that's not an adjective.
Permanent.
Permanent, yes. Who said that? Permanent.
Me.
Permanent or unbroken inner peace and happiness. Sounds like a mouthful, but that is actually what all of us want. You may say, that's not what I want. In fact, I had someone tell me the other day, that's not what he wants. Through many painstaking angles, painstaking examples, stories, I somehow brought him round. Well, not brought him round, but then he understood. Yes, I get it now. Everybody is looking for that permanent, unbroken peace and happiness. What that is represented by is the state of self-realization. Mama Dharma, my supreme being. When you unite with that supreme being, you have achieved the culmination of human knowledge. You have achieved your life's purpose. So, the Bhagavad Gītā, the philosophy of Vedanta, it prepares us for the eventualities of life. Now, we're not talking about someone who is a pessimist, who expects the worst. Neither Are we talking about someone who is always only seeing the good, unrealistic way to function? But when we talk about someone who is investigating the truths of life, a philosopher is someone who is prepared for the eventualities of life, knows that anything can happen at any time. He doesn't expect them. If you expect them, you're a pessimist. He is prepared for them. Now, the question we have to ask ourselves is, how prepared are we for what life has to throw at us? You see, everything you've insured, car, laptop, phone, pet insurance is there. Believe it or not, pet insurance. Someone phoned me the other day trying to sell me pet insurance. Pet insurance, you've insured your pets, you insured your house, everything you've insured except you. No, I'm not talking about life insurance. Everyone, I'm just waiting for you to push off so they can collect. I'm not talking about that. I think it's Arthur Schopenhauer. He says, with reference to this knowledge, he says, paraphrasing slightly here until I can recall it exactly. This knowledge will be this, not only the solace of my life, but the solace of my death, the ultimate insurance. Solace means whatever life has to throw at him, he remains in that equanimous mental state. Even when death is knocking at the door, what is there to fear when you have a complete understanding of the workings and mechanisms of everything? This is Bhagavad Gītā. So, finally, Krishna ends. Yatha chasi tatha karu. This is how he ends the Bhagavad Gītā. Now, essentially, what that means is, after having delivered all the entire philosophy, he says, I've given you this philosophy, Arjuna. Now it's up to you. You act how you will. You do what you want to do. There's no do's and don'ts. You're never going to find in any of these lessons. Do this, don't do this. Do that, don't do that. No. Vedanta presents you with the entire truth, the entire truths of life. Like a buffet. Now, you go to a buffet, you don't take everything there. You take those things which you enjoy. Similarly with philosophy, it's very difficult. You have to have an enormous appetite to take it all on. But you would go and take things that make sense to you. Take those up. Practice them, examine them, experiment with them, apply them in your own life. Does it make sense? Does it work? Verify them. That's the approach you need to take. No. Why are you doing that? Krishna said so. It's written in the Bhagavad Gītā. But why are you doing that? It's there. Then you're just blindly following. That's not the intention of the study. The intention is for you to be able to think independently. Everything needs to be scrutinized. I don't know if any of you, definitely those with kids, will know lice, right? Now you go and get that lice medicine. And with it comes a comb. Have you seen the comb that comes with? Bristles are so close together. You almost brush your teeth with that comb. They've got to be close together because those things are so small. So if they're any bigger, it'll miss. They've got to be close to each other. This is the same way you have to examine this philosophy. Verse by verse, word by word, verse by verse. Don't worry, we'll be doing it together. We'll get through it together. But you have to adopt this approach. Scrutinize it every step of the way. Does it make sense to you? Does it admit my logic and reason? If it does, by all means, take it up, put it into practice, verify it. In that, you start living these truths. Otherwise, they will stay there. They will stay there in the book. And you will stay here, outside of the book. We want to get what's in here into here and make it part of us. So that is just a brief introduction to the book and to our course of study. Next week, we will be able to get into the text itself. But before we conclude, are there any questions or clarifications that anyone may have to the book, to the course of study, what we're going to be doing, what we aim to achieve, anything, in fact? You're more than welcome to ask. For those of you who are not yet part of the WhatsApp group, you should have received a mail. There is a link on there. You can click, that'll send you straight into the group. You can join yourself. There will be no more email reminders. It'll all just be through WhatsApp channel. If there are any of you that don't have WhatsApp, please let me know, and then I can make a concession to be able to remind you. The group simply serves as a reminder. I again ask you all to refrain from commenting on the group because there are a number of participants in that group. So every time you comment and say, we are load shedding or this or that, 30, 40 people have to hear that. So if you want to let me know something, you can just message me directly rather than posting it on the group. Unless it's something that is useful for everyone, we'll try and keep the comments to a minimum. I'm sure all of you are members of infinite amounts of WhatsApp groups. It seems to be trending at the moment. Just join a group, put you on a group, this group, that group. What are you doing? No, it's the afternoon kids pickup group. For what day? Only for Tuesdays. There's another group for Mondays and Wednesdays. So I don't want to flood you with unnecessary information, and neither should you want to flood everyone else with unnecessary information. So please keep that channel to a minimum in terms of what we put on there, mainly just to serve as reminders for you guys. I know you all got busy lives and sometimes you forget that it's Wednesday. Oh my God, it's Wednesday again. It happens to the best of us. So it's just a reminder, and obviously events that are coming up, talks or anything. Even if you want to post something on the group that you find may be beneficial for everyone, you could always just pass it through me, and we can see if it is applicable to what we're studying or if it's going to benefit the group. And then we could post it on the group. So just some sort of WhatsApp courtesy. Right. If there are no questions or clarification, one last thing, if anybody does not have a copy of the Bhagavad Gītā, Swamiji's commentary, you could let me know. It takes quite a while. We have to import the books from India, so it does take some time. But if anybody needs a copy of the book, they could let me know and I could do a bulk order. Right. It seems as though we are all good for questions, so I will bid you adieu. Hari Om. Thank you, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday.